Hello, elementary teachers and staff. My name is Dave Thielen. I'm one of the instructional technology specialists here in Valley View School District, and today we're going to be talking about computer literacy and the standards that are expected to be exposed to students in grades K through 5 for quarter one. This is a friendly reminder that most of these standards are not expected to be mastered, especially in the primary grade levels. For example, one of the standards we're going to be talking about today is understanding tabs, what they are, what they do, and how to open and close them. That may not necessarily be a standard that needs to be mastered in first grade, for example, but exposure to these standards is incredibly valuable so that way later in the upper elementary, middle, and high school years, students will be able to master this content and have a better understanding of 21st century skills within their classroom and beyond. Just because this is our first video with computer literacy, I want to show you how this works. Basically, there are going to be different bookmarks throughout the course of this YouTube video that are going to highlight different standards. Once you get the idea of what the standard is talking about for your grade level, you can drag the tracker to the next section so that way you can look at all the different standards that we're going to be reviewing today. Again, remember that this is more about exposure to these standards rather than I have to give these students a summative assessment on this standard. That's not what we're doing. We're making sure that these students are exposed to all this content so that way they're going to be set up for success later on. The first topic that we're going to want to cover with our students for quarter one is introducing the main components of their devices. For my kindergarten teachers, this is going to differ from first through fifth grade because your students have different devices. For kindergarten, we're going to want to make sure with iPads that we introduce students to, for example, the power mode / sleep button that's up at the top of our device, as well as the volume buttons and the bottom port, which is the charging port and or the headphone jack adapter. And then finally, the touchscreen that is on the front. For my teachers that are first through fifth grade, we're going to want to introduce students to the Chromebooks, the different ports that are on the side of it, the touch screen, as well as the keyboard, just introducing the different components of the device, which I'm sure you already do at some point. The next topic I'd like to discuss is making sure that students understand or are introduced to the idea of turning off their devices versus sleep mode. Regardless of whatever device you're using, we want to make sure that we start using that vocabulary and terminology. When you tell students to shut down their devices, that means that they're turning them off, not closing the top of the laptop or pressing the sleep button on the iPad. Versus, hey, let's put our devices in sleep mode and head home for the day. Those devices are still on. So make sure that we are introducing our students to the correct terminology of turning off versus sleep mode. Next up on our list is using the mouse pad or trackpad, or for my kindergarten staff, it would be using the finger or touch, using your gestures, right, to allow me to manipulate my screen and do different things. Again, it's all about exposure, exposure, exposure. It's not about mastery of this content, but in those first few days of students getting their devices, give them the opportunity to play around with their device and see what they can do with it, see what they can manipulate. Allow them to go into the internet browser, zoom in, zoom out using those pinch finger options, or using the trackpad to do the same exact thing. Scrolling using two fingers on the trackpad or using one finger on the screen. All of those things are super valuable to students, and I have a tutorial video for grades 1 through 5. If you're interested, you can check out our EdTech site, and that's a student-friendly video that will walk through some of those gestures. For our kindergarten teachers, same thing. It's just allowing students time to play around and see what they can do with their devices. Zooming in, zooming out, scrolling, panning, all of those different things are going to be great tools for them to have later to be successful in their elementary and so on school career. Now, the next thing on our list is talking about applications and desktop icons. Now, again, this is all about exposure. So for my kindergarten teachers with iPads, there's going to be a bunch of apps on your students' iPads that they're going to want to use. Start using that terminology of app and application. Use them interchangeably because they mean the same thing. App is just an abbreviation. Talk about an application just being a program, something that I can do to play in one of the games that I'm using on my iPad. On the flip side, if I'm using a Chromebook, same thing if I'm going to the Google App Store. What does that mean exactly? The apps that are on my Chromebook already. What are they doing? They're applications that allow me to go somewhere else in my Chromebook and play a game, do an activity, whatever that is. Again, just exposure to that terminology. Next up is a very quick one. It's talking about using correct posture when you're using your device. Now, this is a little bit trickier for students with a tablet device, such as my kindergarten students. But we would focus on this regardless of what device we're using, just making sure we talk to students about sitting up straight when they're using devices, because slouching over can hurt our back as well as give us a little bit of problems later on down the road when we're trying to learn how to type. If we have a posture where we're used to slouching or leaning back, it's going to give us more difficulty when we're learning how to type. Now, the next topic that I want to talk about is logging into our devices. Now, for our kindergarten teachers, this may not be as big of a topic for you. For first through fifth grade, I do want to make sure that we talk about just that terminology. Again, it's all about exposure. So, making sure students understand that signing in and logging in are the same thing. And we use those terms interchangeably. Logging into our device means that we are linking our profile. So, anything that we do on that device when we're signed in, it saves that, and people can see that it was us that did it. That's a very important and sometimes hard lesson to understand, especially when students may not be doing the right thing on their devices. So, again, understanding what logging in really means is going to be valuable later on. Next up is talking about using the refresh, forward, and back buttons in my web browser. So, again, for iPads, for Kinder, this would be in the Safari app. Just knowing potentially what it means to refresh my screen. Where is that button located? Again, this can be done anytime in quarter one when you see an opportunity where you're already in Safari with your students. Don't try to reinvent the wheel here by doing a separate lesson, but again, we just want to integrate some of these standards into what we're already doing and make sure that students are exposed to this content. The last topic of discussion for quarter one that we're asking all K-5 teachers to really expose to students is understanding what tabs are. Now, this would be a little bit easier for grades 1 through 5 because on the Chromebook devices, they are simply right at the top of your Google Chrome screen. It's going to show all the tabs that you have open, helping students understand, hey, if I have too many tabs, it's going to be difficult for me to see what's going on, or it could slow down to my device if I have a lot of things running at the same time. Closing out tabs, opening new ones, even potentially a shortcut for tabs could be helpful for students to understand what that is, what its purpose is, and how do I manage it. For our kindergarten teachers, this would be a little bit different, but even still helping students understand where the button is to show all the tabs that are open and then swiping up to close those tabs. Again, just exposure to different ideas of what tabs really are and how I can make sure that I keep my device organized. Now, if you were counting, that is 8 standards or content areas that we're asking that you just introduce and expose your students to regardless of their grades K all the way up through 5. Now, if you are a grade 1 through 5 teacher, I'm asking that you come back in quarter 2 to review the quarter 2 video that will introduce you to 4 other things that we're asking that you expose students to in quarter 2. If you're a kindergarten teacher, these 8 standards will be the main topics of discussion throughout the course of the school year. No need to come back and review any other standards. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions at any point in time on just how to expose students to this content or any other thoughts or ideas, please reach out to me anytime.